Hello everybody and welcome to my obligatory All Hallows Eve special version of Retro Riff. And yeah, I call it All Hallows Eve because I think it sounds a bit cooler. What can I say?
Last year's episode was a bit of a thrown together mess, as I remembered it was All Hallows Eve the day after I actually uploaded and made the whole video in one go, and a bunch of stuff was cut out that should have stayed in the final thing.
But not this year. This year I plan to do everything properly and no means half measures. So of course what you do is you pretty much just copy what you did last year but with a slightly different game in the series and review that instead. It's looking good so far.
Resident Evil.
After the heavy cut and slightly bad FMV intro sequence, and we're in the game.
Now, at first many people's complaints were with the tank controls, but quite honestly I never really noticed them as much of a problem.
They aren't hard to wrap your head around, and I really like how they make the game more tense by providing less control. It's kind of like Clock Tower on the PlayStation and Super Nintendo, also known as Clock Tower The First Fear, where you control the game through a point-and-click interface. Obviously it's not quite the same, but the lack of direct control over the character makes the game a lot more scary, and it really does just add to the tension. It's the same with Resident Evil. The scare factor is heightened by the lack of true or complete control over the character, and it's really enhanced by the fixed camera angles. And I think that the atmosphere the game generates is one of its biggest strengths. The slow and spooky music with its deep beats, followed by a sudden burst of false, fast tempo music as the dogs jump through the windows.
And we all know that everybody jumps at that first time round.
Zombies definitely add to that whole vibe. Unlike earlier survival horror 3D efforts like Alone in the Dark, the monsters are fully texture mapped and look spookier by far as a result.
And unlike new Resident Evil games where their treatment is more akin to something like cannon fodder,
here they are a huge threat. I usually play Resident Evil as Jill, so it takes my only about 2 or 3 good chomps on Jill's neck for her to join the undead ranks. It's not a very forgiving game. Now I really like this level of challenge though. It reminds me that Resident Evil is much more than an adventure game with a thin veneer of horror spread over. This is the real deal. A white-knuckle crawl through the mansion's spooky and deserted halls. Well, mostly deserted anyway.
But then having said that, there are still some strong puzzle elements to the original Resident Evil.
You are encouraged to explore the mansion, fighting your way through to unlock the secrets within. Although the zombies are fairly frequent and the need to conserve ammo may lead to some annoying deaths. This can be discouraging for exploration, but it's not that bad. And considering the game was released in 1996, the graphics hold up surprisingly well. The pre-rendered backgrounds do help, yes, but the character models have enough polygons on them and decent enough textures to make them believable looking characters. However, they're not quite so believable in the sound department. Things are a bit more mixed here. Of course, you have the super goofy voice acting with classic lines such as
Blood. Hope this is not Chris's blood.
Among a few more, that really do seem out of place and can break the game's atmosphere completely. Thankfully there isn't much dialogue and a lot more times where the soundtrack can shine.
As I've mentioned already, the way the pacing and the tone of the soundtrack really adds to the atmosphere the game generates as you play through the Spencer Mansion.
So really only one question remains before the verdict. Is the game still scary? Well, yes and also no. It's more scary in a way, like as a gamer, if that makes sense, due to the difficulty, and can lead to tense encounters with limited ammo, or trying desperately to run around zombies or other enemies to avoid dying when you're low on health and haven't got any health pickups left.
And due to limited saves through a finite amount of ink ribbons which you can use on typewriters to save at various points throughout the mansion.
But whilst there is the odd jump scare as well, or the I didn't see that coming moment, nowadays the game is a little more campy and less terrifying on a human level. At the time, I get it, it would have been a lot scarier, and that's just how things have changed. But it doesn't hold up in that regard quite as well today.
But don't let that deter you from what is, in my opinion, one of the best Resident Evil games in the entire series.
Yes, there are other games in the series like Resident Evil 2, Code Veronica and 4 that sort of built on Resident Evil's formula and built off the foundations. But after playing 3 so much when I was a kid, it's kind of cool to sort of go back. Not that I'd played 1 before or anything, but returning, as it were, to the roots of the series, and I really can see the differences and how it, in a way, how it could have gone a lot different if it wasn't for Resident Evil 3. So my final verdict is that this game is a must-have. The nature of its sequels and the sort of lack of scare factor nowadays do sort of drag it down a little bit, but it's nonetheless a brilliant title. If you can get it, I definitely would, and it's not really that expensive nowadays, considering it's a very well-known game on the original PlayStation. But anyway, from all of us here at RITF Gaming, it was goodbye, happy Halloween.